She went ballistic when I refused to give her the $8,000 designer wedding dress. She ignored me for months until she found out I was planning a honeymoon in Europe and then begged me to go with her. Hello, everyone. Before I continue, I want to mention something about my sister. My sister and I are 11 years apart in age. I'm 36 and she's 25. She wasn't planned. I think most people can guess that my parents had me when they were 20, so I wasn't planned either, and 11 years later they had my sister because she was so young. Our little princess was spoiled from an early age, and I was never jealous of her because I was much older, and in fact I often pampered her. Both my parents are dentists, as am I, because I find it interesting. I supported my younger sister when she said she wanted to become an actress and convinced my parents to let her study at film school where she could learn the ropes. My parents thought it was an unstable choice that depended heavily on luck, but she was able to succeed. But I believed in her and assured them that if she wasn't successful as an actress, I would take care of her. It wasn't the first time I had convinced my parents to let her do something. When she was a teenager, I helped her convince her parents to let her go to parties or stay up late, even go on trips or concerts far away from her friends. She was able to do a lot of things when she was young because I was always there to support her. I was even willing to take the consequences for her mistakes because I loved my little sister so much. But it backfired because she had received so much love and care over the years that she became a complete brat. She was rude, self-centered, and disrespectful to anyone who disagreed with her. We always hoped that she would eventually change these bad habits, but she didn't even change this bad attitude. Somehow she managed to get a man to propose to her. Her boyfriend of 2 years, now husband, proposed almost 8 months ago, and last week she got married. I didn't receive an invitation to the wedding for trivial reasons. The whole family was excited about her wedding, but I felt like I was the one who was most excited. I was the first person she called after the proposal. The first few weeks were great, and I visited her almost every weekend to plan the wedding. We knew it would be a big wedding from the start, because that was my sister's style. She was still struggling as an actress and couldn't afford it herself, so my parents paid for her, and her boyfriend's family were also relatively well off, so they contributed as well. And since her husband was an engineer with a stable job, my sister didn't have to worry too much about money. I offered to pay for her wedding dress because I wanted her to choose one at a reasonable price. Besides, I have a friend who owns a bridal shop, and she agreed to give us a discount no matter what we bought. I told my sister about this and she agreed. But after a while, she told me she wanted to buy a designer wedding dress, which would cost 88,000 yuan. Normally, I would not object, but I had already planned to sponsor my sister's honeymoon, so I was reluctant to spend so much money on the wedding dress. I have always wanted to travel around Europe, so I want to surprise her after the wedding as a gift, which will definitely cost much more than buying a wedding dress, and I have already spent so much on gifts. I don't want to spend another $8,000 on a wedding dress because it seems unnecessary. She won't wear the wedding dress just once, but the honeymoon trip will be cherished for a lifetime. With this in mind, I told my sister that I couldn't spend that much money, especially since my friend had agreed to let us go shopping and even custom make a wedding dress from her at a more reasonable price, so that she could get a wedding dress exactly like the one she had picked out, but it was for my friend. But she insisted on a designer brand and nothing else, so we had a fight about it and I stuck to my guns. She was angry when she heard my refusal and didn't even say goodbye to me when I came home the day after we had our argument. I thought she would change her mind and call me after a while, but that didn't happen. I didn't want to tell her about the honeymoon because I wanted to surprise her, but then she didn't speak to me for almost a week. Half the time I wanted to call her and just tell her why I didn't want to spend so much money on just her wedding dress. I didn't want to upset her because I knew she was already under a lot of pressure about the wedding. After the 6th day, I planned to call her because it was the longest we had gone without speaking. But she called me first. I thought she was calling to apologize for her behavior because she was being petty and childish over the wedding dress. But I was wrong. She started by asking me why I was being so stingy because she knew I was rich and could afford the dress. Before I could reply, she went on to say, "Oh, You don't have a husband or children, so what do you need all that money for? I can still remember every word she said, and it really hurt me. I didn't expect her to say that, because I didn't think she would say such a thing to me, at least not as my sister, because she knows I'm very sensitive about this. I don't like people saying things like that to me, because it's a choice I've made. I never wanted to have a family, so I chose to remain single and not have children. But many people judge my choices, and that makes me feel very uncomfortable. My sister knows this, but she still picks on me to provoke me, so I'm very angry. She usually only does this to people she dislikes, and she's never done it to me before, but I've never rejected her before either, so I was caught off guard this time. She suddenly changed her attitude just because I refused to buy an expensive wedding dress. I told her that she couldn't talk to me like that, especially since I was buying the wedding dress for her. She hit back by saying that she was obviously giving me the opportunity to fill my empty life with the things I bought for the wedding dress, and then she went on to say that I was jealous because she was getting married and I was almost 40 and still single. I then hung up the phone because I felt that it was too disrespectful to me, and I didn't speak to her for the next few days. I was very unhappy and even cried because the things she said were so mean. I couldn't believe that after all I had done for her, she would say those things to hurt me. We haven't spoken since, but I did hear from my parents, who reassured me that everything would be fine but didn't want to interfere. They told me she was angry with me, but they believed she would come around. I began to give up hope. I didn't speak to her for about 2 months. After a while, I heard that all the other relatives had received wedding invitations, but not me. I realized that she no longer intended to invite me because of our argument. I was very sad about this, because I felt that I always did everything for her, just to make her happy, but now I was treated like this. In fact, I was willing to go all out for the wedding, sponsoring her dream honeymoon, so I wanted her to give up the idea of a wedding dress. After I found out that she didn't invite me to the wedding, I was sad for a long time, but I finally got over it because I finally saw my sister for who she really is. She is a complete narcissist who will never care about or love anyone unless it is to her advantage. With that in mind, I blocked her on all social media accounts and stopped speaking to her for a long time, but I kept in touch with my parents. A few months ago, we went out for dinner, and I drank too much champagne and finally told them the real reason I didn't agree to buy my sister the dress she wanted and my plan to send her and her husband on a trip to Europe when I was sober. I made my parents promise not to tell anyone what I had told them, but they broke their promise. My sister's wedding took place about a week ago, and on the morning of her wedding day, she showed up at my doorstep at about 6 a.m. I was completely unprepared and overwhelmed because I was woken up by the doorbell and she was the last person I wanted to see. We hadn't spoken for months, so I was very shocked. I didn't open the door, but I saw her through the intercom. I decided to call and ask her why she had suddenly shown up. She answered the phone and very politely and sweetly asked me to let her in. But I told her that I didn't want to see her. I knew that it would be embarrassing for her to hear me say that, but I didn't care, because at my age, I accept disrespect, no matter who it comes from. She was no longer a teenager. She knew her words would hurt me, but she still said such things to me. I have neither forgotten nor forgiven anything. Even on the phone, she did not apologize for what she said, but told me she wanted to invite me to the wedding to make it up to me. I was confused and spent some time thinking about why she would suddenly show up at my door on the morning of the wedding after months of treating me coldly. I decided to ask her if she wanted to talk to my mother. She stupidly agreed, knowing that my mother must have told her what gift I had planned to give her. She had suddenly come to my house to apologize just to make sure I really intended to give her a gift. I asked her point blank if her mother had told her about the gift, and she hesitated before admitting that she knew what surprise I had planned for her. She was so sorry for her actions, that's why she had come to invite me now. If she had just said she didn't know about the gift, I might have let her in and made up with her, but she didn't have the common sense to lie and told me the reason she was here. The gift. That's why she came to invite me to her wedding. I was so angry that I told her to leave because it was too late and it was too trivial. But she had the nerve to say that I couldn't just send her away because it was her wedding day and she had come herself to invite me, even if that meant she would end up arriving late at her own wedding. I was already upset, and when she said that, I was even more annoyed, so I told her loudly that I didn't ask her to come all the way over to invite me, and that it didn't matter to me whether I attended her wedding or not at this point. She started arguing with me, insisting that it was a big deal that she had come to invite me herself, and that I should swallow my pride and not overreact. I said nothing and hung up again because I didn't want to waste my morning arguing with her. After hanging up, I heard her screaming at the door, cursing at me, and then kicking the door. I wanted to call the police, but didn't because it was 6 a.m. and I was still groggy. After that, I heard her drive off, so I went back to sleep and decided to talk to my mother about it later. It was hard, because I was still very upset, but half an hour later I managed to fall asleep again at 9. When I finally woke up properly, I realized that my phone had been ringing the whole time, which was what woke me up. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I thought it might be someone from work, so I answered the call. It turned out to be my sister's husband, who immediately after the wedding found the time and energy to yell at me, and managed to rope all their friends into it. As soon as I picked up the phone, her husband asked if it was me, and when I said yes, they started yelling at me and laughing for 10 whole seconds. Since they were speaking very loudly and using very offensive language, I could hardly speak or think of anything. I then hung up the phone, and a few minutes later I called my mother to ask her what was going on. She told me that she had told my sister the night before the wedding about the honeymoon gift because she thought it would make her sister realize that she was wrong, and then she would apologize to me for all the unplanned things. She said she was sorry. After I told her not to do that, then I asked her about the phone call I just got. She told me she knew nothing about it because she was outside taking pictures with her friends. She didn't even stand near them, so she didn't hear anything. She was surprised that I would treat them that way, but I really didn't, and that was just my sister being petty and stupid. For the next few hours, I sat in my room, seething quietly while I planned what to do. I was also angry with my mother, but I knew her intentions were good, so I forgave her, but my sister had to be taught a lesson. I could have gone to the police, but that wouldn't have achieved anything. She would have been given a light slap on the wrist, and I would have been the monster who ruined my sister's wedding. I thought about what I wanted to do for myself, not revenge. A trip to Europe. I planned to surprise her. Out of pure anger and resentment, I booked a flight and invited a friend to come with me. He gladly agreed, because he was always up for an adventure. It wasn't entirely personal either, because I had already been thinking about taking some time off to spice up my life for a while, and I'm always careful when it comes to big decisions like this. I never do anything impulsive just for the fun of it. So this was also non-personal for me, not just to make my sister feel bad about what happened 3 days ago. My friend and I left, and I'm currently in France. I posted all about our trip on social media, and I knew someone would tell my sister at some point. We don't have many mutual friends, but a lot of her friends do follow me online. But many of her friends do follow me online. I deliberately didn't remove anyone from her friend list so they could see anything I posted and run and tell her, and that's exactly what happened. Someone must have told her. My mother called me this morning to tell me that my sister had had a breakdown and cried for hours after seeing me bragging about my European trip online. She told me that she understood why I wanted to do it, but also criticized me for being petty and said that I should at least have considered that I was more than 10 years older than her and should not have made such a big deal of it. My sister obviously couldn't accept it, and my parents, other relatives, and even a few friends thought it was wrong to mention it in front of her. I now feel like a jerk. Ida and sister because I refused to buy her the wedding dress she wanted. Update. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for your comments and comfort. It means a lot to me that so many people have spoken up for me. Some of you think I'm an idiot for doing too much for my sister and for her, and I agree with that. I did do too much for her and ultimately spoiled her beyond what she deserved. I think I was a bit soft-hearted because I thought she, as my family, would never treat me like she treated others, but obviously I was wrong. I also realize how unfair my parents treated us both just because of the huge age gap between us. The fact that I'm 11 years older than her doesn't mean my feelings don't matter. So I don't understand why I'm being treated this way. When I was upset that my sister refused to speak to me and insulted me, it was only because my parents decided to step back and not interfere in our personal matters. But now just because my sister is upset, they are both involved again, which is really unfair to me. Although I haven't spoken to them about this face to face, I think I will bring it up if my mom calls me again. It's been 4 days since our last phone call and she hasn't called or tried to contact me yet, but I feel like she will either, or my father might, because during our last phone call, my father kept whispering to my mother, and I knew he had a lot to say but didn't because he didn't want to get involved in this drama. I didn't mention this in my last blog post because I didn't think it was important, but considering the situation now, I just want to vent and get all the unpleasantness out. I'm still on holiday, and when I'm with my friend I always put on a happy face, not wanting to upset him, but inside I'm really sad. Today my mother finally called me, the first time in almost 3 weeks. She didn't come to apologize, but told me that she and my father had decided that we shouldn't see each other for a while, because it would upset my sister. So I think we've made it clear that what upset me was actually irrelevant. Not only that, she also told me that she and my father were sponsoring my sister's trip to Bali because she was so upset, and now I didn't have to feel bad for her anymore. I told my mother that I was glad that she had finally become a positive mother and paid active attention to her daughter, even if it meant interfering in her personal affairs. I said that I hoped she would also show me the same love, and I hung up the phone at that moment because I was upset that my sister wouldn't talk to me over a damn dress. Afterwards, my father texted me, saying that the way I treated my mother was unacceptable and that I had to change my attitude towards my family. Otherwise, they could not see a future in which we continued to get along. I texted him back, telling him to go cry himself to death, and then blocked him. I decided not to let my family interrupt my vacation anymore, because it's pointless. Fighting for their attention won't make them like me more, and I'm almost 40. I can't stand my sister's nagging, and my parents just go with the flow anyway. I spent a fortune on this trip, and now I want to enjoy it. So far, I haven't told my friend anything that's happened because I didn't want him to feel like I ruined the trip or bore him with my problems. But I talked to him today and I told him everything and he assured me that I definitely wasn't the problem. But my family is. It's obvious that they have a favorite child, and obviously not me, so they can continue to favor their favorite daughter, but I need to get out of there, and that's what I needed to hear. Because for so long I kept hoping that my sister and parents would change their minds, and now I know they won't, and I'm okay with that. Update 3. Hello everyone, I'm back from my trip, having spent almost 6 weeks walking the streets of European countries. I don't mean to sound preachy, but this trip has completely changed me and my outlook on life. I now feel like a new person, and that's probably why I don't care that my parents disinherited me. It's okay, I'll earn enough to survive on my own. And the friend I went on vacation with, we're together. A week ago, we were drinking wine and he confessed to me that he had had a crush on me for a long time. We have been friends for almost 8 years, so I was surprised. But to be honest, I have always had a crush on him too, but I didn't tell him because I was afraid of ruining our friendship. But now that we are together, I am very happy. I am so glad that I went on this holiday. To be honest, I wanted to get revenge on my sister and my parents, and everything was damned. I needed this holiday more than anything.